Okay, thank you all for joining us today for the Kinship Care Supporting Kinship Families Through Collaboration seminar. My name is Lucinda Hurt, and I'm the Manager of Access Services and Community Programs here at Age Guide. We have a packed agenda for you today of really informative presentations from a variety of professionals serving kinship families from various sectors. I just want to highlight a few housekeeping items before we get started. As you've heard, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available on Age Guide's YouTube channel for later viewing, and we'll be sending that out, the link to that out in the coming days following the seminar. If you have questions for the speakers, please utilize the Q&A feature instead of the chat feature in the webinar. Feedback to the speakers or any other information can be placed in the chat. This will help us make sure that we're seeing your questions and addressing them. In the days following the seminar, probably after the holiday, you'll receive a letter confirming your participation in the webinar and a link to the YouTube posting and the PowerPoint slides. So you can, feel free to share those. We hope that you do, and share the link to the recording so people who weren't able to attend can attend. If you signed up for continuing education units, you will also receive an additional email with a certificate of attendance that you complete with your name on it. It's a fillable document. And lastly, when you leave the seminar, you'll be prompted to complete a survey. Your feedback is really valuable to us, and we hope that you will take a few minutes to complete that survey. So now, without further ado, we're going to get started. I would like to introduce our keynote speakers, Arcella Armstrong and Marcia Rose, from the Area Office on Aging of Northwestern Ohio. Arcella is a licensed social worker of over 25 years of clinical experience. She has a BS in social work from Tuskegee University and certificate in executive leadership from the Center of Nonprofit Resources. She is the coordinator of caregiver support programs and Kinship Navigator programs at the Area Office on Aging. And Marcia Rose, who is the supervisor of Kinship Navigator program. She's a graduate of the University of Toledo, a licensed social worker in the state of Ohio and Michigan for over 30 years. Her areas of specialty include older adults and family caregivers, developmental disabilities, mental health, substance use disorders, case management, specialized information and referral services, Medicaid healthcare compliance and oversight, and medical practice management. Thank you, Marcia and Arcella, for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you, Lucinda, so much. And again, Marcia and I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to present and share best practices on how capitalizing on partnerships help to extend the reach of our Kinship Navigator program. And again, want to thank everyone for attending today, and a special thank you to those that are family caregivers, due to this being November being celebrated as National Family Caregiving Month. So thank you all for joining us. Next slide, please. This is just a slide that we thought might be helpful to get the conversation started. And this is a slide that talks about strategic partnership. One of the things that, some of the important things to consider when thinking about partnerships is be strategic with the types of organizations you choose to partner with, build relationships with kinship families, community members, public, private, nonprofit organizations. Be solutions oriented as it relates to supporting kinship families, be innovative in thinking on ways to support these families, and investment in our future. Kinship caregivers are helping to rear our next generation. Teamwork: how can your organization work within and outside your system to support kinship families? All the aforementioned things are important to be mindful of as we support kinship families. Next slide, please. Objectives today. We today hope that you will learn about the services offered through the Kinship Navigator program at the Area Office on Aging, learn how cost-neutral partnerships can extend the reach and capacity of a program, learn how to establish and cultivate meaningful contractual and in-kind partnerships to benefit kinship families and meet critical needs, learn how to develop outreach tools and strategies that increase awareness about the growing needs of kinship families, increase community engagement, and build partnerships around common goals. Next slide, please. And again, kinship care. There are many reasons that kinship care occurs: serious illness or death of a biological parent, economic instability, abuse or neglect, incarceration, mental health issues, substance use disorders, which is a significant contributing factor. Next slide, please. In October 2023, we partnered and had a resource workshop for grandparents and relative caregivers raising children with the fitting title, Superheroes Need Support Too, as not all superheroes wear capes. This successful workshop featured breakout educational sessions, a keynote speaker, and expert panel, and was developed in partnership with Neighborhood Health Association, Lucas County Children's Services, and Believe Center and NAMI of Toledo. Next slide, please. What do all of these famous faces have in common? Well, all of these folks were raised by a relative caregiver. So relative caregiver is across all sections of our society, and this is just a snapshot of some of those that have been raised by relative caregiver. Next slide, please. Nationwide, this is an infographic here that talks about nationwide, there are 8 million children who live with a relative, is the head of household. 2.6 million of these children are being raised by a relative or close family friend and do not have a parent living in the household. Globally, it is estimated that 1 in 10 children live in kinship care. This is a quick snapshot of grandparents raising grandchildren. 56% are still in the workforce. 17% are living below the poverty line. 25% have a disability of their own. 48% are age 60 or better. 46% raised grandchildren for 5 years or more. Sometimes it is difficult to identify kinship families due to stigma potentially associated with why kinship care was needed, fluid status of caregiving when there is reunification with the parent, and majority do not have connection with a formal agency. Next slide, please. It's estimated that 1 in every child being raised by kin in foster care, they are 18. There are 18 children being raised in kin outside of the foster care system. More recent statistics show for every 1 child being raised in kin foster care, there are 34 children being raised by kin outside foster care. In fact, grandparents and relatives raising children are saving U.S. taxpayers approximately $4 billion, yes, you heard correctly, $4 billion annually by keeping these children out of the foster care system. The inequity, most grandparents and family caregivers are not licensed foster care providers and do not receive monthly payments as foster care provider does. Oftentimes, children are not involved in the child welfare system, which limits access to certain types of financial assistance. Program benefits such as healthcare, supplemental nutrition assistance, SNAP, TANF funds, if applicable, or Social Security benefits, if applicable, take time to access. Many times there are very little financial support available to help grandparents or other relative caregivers who may already be living on limited incomes and suddenly find themselves taking children in on a moment's notice, not prepared to provide basic needs such as food, clothing, beds, or cribs. Next slide, please. Decades of research shows that kinship care leads to better outcomes and permanency. Additionally, when grandparents and relative caregivers are supported by kinship navigator programs, children have overall better outcomes. And this infographic highlights stability, safety, permanency, mental health, cultural identity, and a sense of belonging. Next slide, please. The Area Office on Aging Kinship Navigator program got its start 23 years ago as a result of a collaboration between directors at the Area Office on Aging, Lucas County Department of Job and Family Services, and Lucas County Children's Services. These entities wanted to address unmet community need of support for kinship families. The initiative was championed by Lucas County commissioners and the Area Office on Aging entered a contractual agreement with Lucas County Department of Job and Family Services and Lucas County Children's Services to provide services through a Kinship Navigator program. Our Kinship program staff are experienced and well respected in the community for their work with kinship families. This year, the Area Office on Aging Kinship Navigator program was nationally recognized by Grand Families and Kinship Support Network, National Technical Assistance Center, and U.S. Aging as a national leader in the provision of services and developing meaningful partnerships that benefit kinship families. Next slide, please. And this is just a quick snapshot of the slide where we were listed as a program example, and that's on page 13. And again, at the end of the presentation, we do include a resource page where you can access all of the things that I'm mentioning in the slide, all the resources. Next slide, please. And this was another resource that we were included in, and this is called Making a Difference. It's a monthly resource put out by the Grand Families and Kinship Support Network. So again, you will have access to that slide at the end of the presentation as well. Next slide, please. Our Kinship Navigator program, it's free for kinship caregivers who meet the following eligibility criteria. Caregiver is the primary caregiver, raising a child or children from birth to 18 years of age with no biological parent living in the home, and they must be a resident of Lucas County. Other noteworthy things are a Kinship Navigator program eligibility. You do not have to be, there are no caregiver age requirements. The adult, other than being an adult and of age 18 or older, no caregiver or household income requirements, and no legal custody or guardianship requirements for our program either. No child welfare system involvement is required. Next slide, please. And that's just a referral form that we've developed. Next slide, please. And teamwork makes the dream work is one of our sayings. This is just, we're a small but mighty program, and this lists all of the staff working within our kinship program. Next slide, please. Our community partnerships. On your screen is a visual representation of many agencies we partner with. And as you can see, it ranges the gamut. Next slide, please. We break our partnerships into 3 categories: in-kind, monetary support, and contractual. Today, we are providing you with a resource from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania that goes into much greater detail about the considerations of key partnerships and alliances as an organization develops their growth strategies. You may wish to explore this helpful resource in order to identify the specific strategies that might benefit your organization as you seek to develop partnerships, but we are not going to spend a lot of time on it today. Next slide, please. The Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania outlines 3 strategies to consider when seeking partnerships. A window strategy uses partnerships as a window to new technologies or developments in your industry and is appropriate when there is a high level of uncertainty because it keeps your organization open to the flow of new ideas and technologies without overinvesting. An option strategy. Partnership creates concrete strategic options for your organization by creating a combination of people, routines, and assets that can be scaled up or down and is appropriate when there is a moderate amount of uncertainty about which options will ultimately succeed. And finally, a positioning strategy. Partnership creates a best-in-class advantage when your organization partners with another organization that has complementary capabilities to help you achieve scale or scope and is appropriate when there is a low level of uncertainty. Next slide, please. Taking the action steps to help your organization determine what type of strategic partnerships will best help to meet the needs of your organization and deal with the current levels of uncertainty as they impact on returns of your business. Your organization will have to identify the goals you want to achieve from the partnership, identify the level of financial and managerial resources you plan to invest, which, considering both the magnitude and the level of uncertainty about the expected returns, and identifying your partnership strategy based on your answers to the previous 2 action steps. A high level of uncertainty would lead to a window strategy, a moderate level of uncertainty would lead to an option strategy, and a low level of uncertainty would lead to a positioning strategy. Finally, clarify your partnership strategy and objectives with your potential partners to ensure success for all and a sustainable long-term alliance. Next slide, please. And as you see here, this at the top of your screen, kind of left-hand corner, you see kind of a gift box here. This just kind of highlights, this is an icon that we'll be using throughout the presentation that kind of highlights in-kind support. And as you can see, the bubble here, we have, again, just kind of highlights some of the in-kind partnerships that we have. And to determine what types of partnerships are the best match for your strategic goals, increasing your success and managing uncertainty and reducing risk, and for growth. And this just kind of shows some of the things that we have utilized, including donation of space, distribution of our Parenting Smarts resource guide, donation of time and expertise, donation of services, and donation of items. Next slide, please. Contractual partnerships. You'll see this throughout the presentation as well, a little contract here at the top to the left. And with that, again, you can see these are some of the partnerships that we have had contractual agreements with in that bubble there. And a new partnership that we had this year was with the Ohio Federation for Health Equity and Social Justice as it related to dental health of Kinship children. Next slide, please. And again here, monetary partnerships. This is an infographic here that shows some of the monetary donations and funds that we've utilized. That included the purchase of Toledo Farmers Market tokens and holiday hams and turkeys for Kinship families. And then we also had applied for a Walmart Foundation grant and received that in the amount of $70,000 received for mitigating malnutrition with farm fresh delivery for Kinship families. Next slide, please. And again, technical support. It's always good to help that as well, to help strengthen your partnerships as well. And these are some areas where we've extended some technical support. And next slide, please. Media support is something else. Media outreach is huge. This again is a bubble that shows some of the media outreach that we have done. And next slide, please. What do you see? Opportunities or challenges? Next slide, please. The value of community partnerships. The value of community partnerships includes the following: benefits caregivers by providing access to support, education, goods, and services, and linkage to reliable and committed local providers, builds capacity and extends program reach without burden to the program budget, and maximizes creativity and diversity of thought to address local community needs. Now, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Marcia Rose, who will share some additional information.
Thanks, Arcelia.
Thank you.
We do want to point out that saying yes to partnerships and opportunities is key. Next slide, please. We are going to jump into switching gears for a little bit and jump into some kinship trivia. I'm going to read these questions that are on your screen, and I'd like you to please enter the response that you believe to be correct in the chat box. And then I'll tell you what the correct answers are. Question number 1, what year was the first National Family Caregivers Month presidential proclamation signed? A, 2001, B, 2003, C, 1997, or D, 1998? All right, we're seeing a lot of different answers here. The correct answer to this question is C, 1997. And we've got several people that got that right. Good job. Number 2, how many children in Illinois live in homes where a relative is the head of household? A, 365,000 children, B, 164,000 children, C, 264,000 children, or D, 465,000 children. Again, we're seeing a lot of different answers for this question. The correct answer for this one is C, 264,000 children. Question number 3, which of the following individuals was raised by their grandparents? A, Leonardo DiCaprio, B, John Lennon, C, Maya Angelou, or D, all of the above? All right, the correct answer to this question is D, all of the above. Next slide, please. So what you see on your screen is our program flyer and quick facts. It is a high impact tool for outreach purposes. And this flyer briefly summarizes the contractual service that are provided by our programs, such as information referral, ongoing assistance, caregiver education, evidence-based programming, support groups, newsletters, our biweekly e-blast, and also our free Parenting Smarts resource guide. We will be looking at these specific services in more detail in the upcoming slides. And I do want to remind you, as Arcelia mentioned, to take note of the partnership icons that you'll see at the top left corner of your screens. These delineate if the type of partnership for the service was in-kind, monetary, or contractual. Also, I do want to mention that during the COVID pandemic, our program did pivot from in-person programming to a virtual platform. And effective October 1st of this year, 2023, we did return to in-person programming again. Next slide, please. So information and referral and assistance is a key service that we provide. Our caregivers often request help in the areas of housing, food, clothing, furniture, legal assistance, financial help, education and childcare, transportation, and mental health. In fiscal year 2023, our program completed 153 intake needs assessments with new Kinship caregivers, which was an increase of 130% from the previous year. Also in fiscal year 2023, we provided 2,161 instances of information and referral services to 581 Kinship caregivers. Next slide, please. The Child Traumatic Stress Workshop is one of 2 evidence-based programs that we offer twice a year, and that's in partnership with Sophia Counseling Center. Sophia Center actually facilitates the 3 sessions for this workshop. They provide lunch, and they also provide space for the workshop free of charge. The Child Traumatic Stress Workshop allows caregivers of any age the opportunity to learn about the impact of trauma on the development and behavior of children. And as a bonus, if the caregiver does complete all 3 sessions, the Sophia Center does provide them with a gift card at the end. And typically that's to Kroger for groceries. Next slide, please. The second evidence-based program we offer twice a year is the Wellness Initiative for Senior Education, which is through a partnership with Harbor Behavioral Health, who is the workshop facilitator. Our local senior center donates the space for the workshop, and we do have a provider contract in place for caregiver transportation. This workshop allows caregivers age 55 and better to learn about the aging process and celebrate this exciting stage of life, and also to connect with other people that are going through similar experiences. First-time participants in this program do earn a $50 Kroger gift card if they complete the workshop successfully. Next slide, please. Our program offers a quarterly Let's Talk support group and a Kinship Club meeting. This gives caregivers the opportunity to connect with others in a similar situation to better cope with the added stress of parenting again later in life, and also to strengthen relationships with children in their care. Caregivers also have the opportunity to learn about new resources that might be available to them and increase their skills in the areas of parenting, child development, and again, relationship building and resiliency. We offer these groups in 2 different locations in the community through in-kind partnerships with our local senior centers, who again donate the space. And we do have guest presenters that are from community agencies that provide their services free of charge. We also have contractual agreements in place with partners to offer on-site childcare and transportation services. Next slide, please. Our 6-day summer series is offered each year in July. We provide educational programming for caregivers in the areas of education, mental health, permanency and support, legal issues, health and wellness, and caregiver self-care. Activities and educational programming are also in place to support children and youth who are on site. The agenda on your screen is from this past year's virtual summer series, and it gives you an idea of some of the amazing topics and guest presenters in the lineup. Summer series is offered through contractual partnerships for venue, transportation, meals, and on-site childcare. And again, guest presenters are obtained through in-kind partnerships. Next slide, please. Starting in 2021, our program added enhanced caregiver education to help boost caregiver resilience during the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of those new topics included computer and technology training, compassion fatigue, mental health first aid, trauma and parenting, and medication management in adults. Guest presenters were, again, secured through in-kind partnerships with community agencies. Next slide, please. In 2020, using CARES Act funding, our agency began an electronic tablet initiative, which helps caregivers stay connected during the pandemic. The pilot program helped to decrease social isolation and loneliness, increase social connections, and it allowed caregivers to access our virtual programming. The program provided caregivers with free Wi-Fi connections and unlimited data. They also offered 90 minutes of free individualized tech support and also free group technology training. Again, this partnership was made available through partners of Can Do Tech, who provided the technology sessions, and with T-Mobile, who provided the Wi-Fi and connectivity and the data plans. Next slide, please. Special events. So these are made possible through generous donations through our community partners, and have included tickets to our Toledo Mud Hens baseball team, our Toledo Walleye hockey team. We also have received donations of Toledo Zoo family memberships, school supplies, winter coats, pajama bags, holiday meal boxes, hams and turkeys for the holiday, and COVID-19 relief gift cards. Our Kinship families really appreciate this tangible assistance. Next slide, please. Just real quick, these are a few photos that were submitted by some of our Kinship families that show them enjoying a night of family fun at the Mud Hens minor league baseball game. Go Hens. Next slide, please. With in-kind support from our partners at Toledo Public Schools, Palmer Energy, and Buckeye Health Plan, we were able to distribute backpack totes of school supplies to 200 Kinship children this year. The photo on the left is of our Kinship staff with 4 individuals from Palmer Energy. Palmer is a private corporation that chose to adopt our program for the past 3 years so that we can offer school supply assistance to our Kinship families. Toledo Public Schools donated additional school supplies, and Buckeye Health Plan provided the backpack totes for the project. The photo on the right-hand side does represent additional partnership with our Area Office on Aging Retired Senior Volunteer Program. We had volunteers assist us in handing out school supplies to families. So you see a couple of those lovely volunteers there with me. And we also held our distribution events at our local senior center, who provided the space free of charge. Next slide, please. In fiscal year 2023, we provided 1,330 holiday meals to Kinship families, and that was through support from our Area Office on Aging Senior Nutrition Program and Buckeye Health Plan. The meal boxes were provided by our nutrition program, and Buckeye provided some additional holiday turkeys and hams. Also on the right-hand side of your screen, you see a caregiver who's accepting a winter coat bag with hats and gloves for the kids. This was made possible through in-kind partnership with Toledo Christ Child Society. And this year we gave out 141 coats to kids. Next slide, please. We publish a quarterly newsletter and a biweekly e-blast, which has information on our upcoming programming and has a resource corner, caregiver education, and oftentimes free activities for families. We also like to put a shout out and thank our partners in our newsletter, which you can see there on your screen. This example was from summer of 2023, but it was a good example for your reference. We also make it possible to self-subscribe to our newsletter and to our biweekly e-blast through our website at areaofficeonaging.com. Next slide, please. Our program puts out a free 64-page publication called the Parenting Smarts Resource Guide. This guide is highly requested and widely distributed through our outreach efforts. Features rich content and resources for kinship families in the categories that you see there on your screen. We're currently in our 10th edition of this guide, and it is actually brand new. We just received that about 2 months ago. You can access an electronic version of the guide through our Area Office on Aging website, or you can request a hard copy of this publication through our Kinship Navigator program. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, the state of Ohio discontinued the stabilization program in July of 23, but we still wanted to mention this partnership as a potential opportunity with funders. Because of our longstanding partnership with Lucas County Children's Services, our program was asked to do the pre-screening piece for their stabilization program when caregivers had a closed case and legal custody of the child. Caregivers could apply for stabilization assistance every year, and it was pretty great because previously this help was only available to children's services cases that were open. Eligible caregivers could receive vouchers for vital assistance, things like food, clothing, furniture, tutoring services, childcare, rent assistance, and some pretty unique enrichment opportunities with the YMCA memberships and Toledo Zoo memberships. Next slide, please. So our caregivers who are enrolled in the Kinship Navigator program get convenient and seamless access to all of the Area Office on Aging services. You see those on your screen. We have publications called the Older Adult Resource Guide, which is the top photo on the left, and the Caregiving Smarts Resource Guide, which is the bottom photo on the left. We also provide, again, Medicaid and non-Medicaid home and community-based services at the agency, nutrition and wellness programs, our senior farmers market program, retired senior volunteer program services, and so much more. So it's pretty neat when individuals can get connected very easily to those programs. Next slide. As a further example of partnerships, we wanted to briefly share a few of the innovative in-kind partnerships that we executed during the COVID-19 pandemic. These partnerships included a food bank direct referral program for families who were impacted by a substance use disorder. We also provided emergency home delivered meals, distributed winter coats to families, school supplies, and we provided $10,000 in Kroger gift cards to caregivers so they could purchase groceries and cleaning supplies, which was made available to us through the Lucas County Health Department. Next slide, please. This slide highlights a few of our amazing kinship families, and our families are the reason we do what we do. Next slide, please. Back to our partnership bubble. So most of us have heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. This is particularly true in the world of grand families and kinship families, and in the world of kinship programming, where funding is often limited. The community partners on your screen have been an active part of the Kinship Village here in Northwest Ohio. These partnerships were cultivated over time by having a dialogue at the local level about how to meet the needs of kinship families, and by saying yes to the opportunity of partnerships. By having diverse partnerships which span across all sectors, we have extended the reach of our Kinship Navigator program. Next slide, please. I wanted to touch briefly on some examples of the outreach tools and methods that we utilize to increase community awareness about our program and build partnerships. Some of the outreach tools we use are the Parenting Smarts Resource Guide. This is definitely a high impact outreach tool. We also developed a specialized bookmark, which you actually see there on the right-hand side of your screen. Kinship staff developed this, and we can send that out with the Parenting Smarts Guide. Our annual event calendar is another tool, our quarterly newsletter, the program referral form, and of course, our biweekly e-blast that is sent out using Constant Contact. Some of the outreach methods that we utilize are in-person and virtual program overviews for community groups and agencies. We also attend a lot of community events and health fairs. We do targeted mailings, media interviews, which involve television, radio, podcasts, newspapers, and magazines. We also place advertisements in many local publications. We also had a very great partnership with our local library and other partners so that we can widely distribute materials and get those out into the community. We also try to maximize our use of social media and our website, not only of our own agency, but of our community partners as well. Next slide, please. Examples of where we outreach to includes government agencies like your local child welfare agency, the Department of Job and Family Services, your County Board of Developmental Disabilities, the County Health Department. Even juvenile and family court are good targets. Nonprofit agencies like Places of Worship, the United Way, local mental health agencies, your local YMCAs, food banks, and the YWCA. For-profit systems like hospitals, childcare centers, physician and dental offices, managed care plans, financial institutions, and transportation companies. Schools, including Head Start programs, early childhood education, elementary and high schools, be it private, public, or parochial, as well as colleges or universities. You name it, believe that Arcelia and I can pretty much find a way to partner with any type of community agency. Next slide, please. A simple acronym about partnerships that we want you to remember is TEAM. Together we can achieve more. Next slide, please. This slide briefly is examples of what some of our community partners and leaders are saying about the Kinship Navigator program. We just wanted to share that with you, and you can read that when you get the slides at a later time. Next slide, please. And these are the resources from today's presentation. We really hope you find them helpful in your journey to develop partnerships that will assist your kinship families here at Age Guide and across Illinois. Age Guide, again, will be sending the slides to all attendees after today's webinar, most likely after the holidays, so that you'll have this information available. Next slide, please. Lastly, a big shout out and thank you to Age Guide for the honor of presenting today. Arcelia and myself welcome any attendee to reach out to us with questions or discussion you might want to have beyond today's webinar. Thank you everyone for your time and attention. Next slide, please. And that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia. and Arcelia for all of that great information, all of the great partnerships that you've highlighted. I really hope that everyone on the call today, and certainly here at HGuide, we can utilize your ideas and create some of those partnerships ourselves to better serve these kinship families. So next we will hear from Brianne Hetman and Deputy Majority Leader Natalie Manley regarding the Will County, the new pilot program and legislation in Will County. So Brianne has worked in the social service field since 2000 across all populations and services, including substance abuse, domestic violence, mental health, and those experiencing homelessness and individuals with disabilities. She's currently serving as the Chief Executive Officer at Senior Services of Will County. Deputy Majority Leader Natalie Manley represents the 98th House District of Illinois. This district includes all parts of Bolingbrook, Crest Hill, Joliet, Plainfield, and Romeoville. Leader Manley is a champion for kinship families and successfully supported new legislation to support these families, which she and Brianne will now talk to you more about. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucinda.
Yeah.
So Leader Manley is actually not with us today. She got called away unexpectedly. So we have her Chief of Staff here, Tyler, in case anyone has questions specifically about the legislation. But my intention here is just to overview the current programming services that Senior Services of Will County offers, and then how we were able to partner with Leader Manley and identify some gaps here in Will County and across the state, and our plan to address those through additional caregiver programming. Senior Services of Will County is a current caregiver resource center and caregiver counseling center provider through HGuide. And through that, most of you know, we provide physical, educational, and emotional support services, and is open to caregivers, 55 over 60, basic programming that everyone is familiar with working with HGuide. As we explore how we navigated into, on the next slide here, Lucinda, the need that Leader Manley was able to identify is that in Senior Services of Will County sits particularly in her district. So she was aware of all of the services that Senior Services offers to all of Will County. And specifically, she had created a Grand LAC, which is a Legislative Action Committee. Grand LAC, grandparents, see what she did there with that connotation. She created this committee to get feedback from individuals, particularly in her district, because she was starting to hear things from grandparents that were raising grandchildren about navigations and challenges and things that they were doing. So first she was having these meetings and hearing the feedback, and then partnered with Senior Services and said, is this something that you guys hear too? Do you know of these grandparents? Do you hear of the challenges that they're navigating? And what are some other things that maybe you all know at Senior Services that she herself as a legislator didn't necessarily identify? And as we move on to the next slide, you can see that Grand LAC had communicated lots of challenges, specifically in behavioral health, all of the different educational systems, healthcare in general, and specifically daycare, early childhood education, and after school care. And at Senior Services, what we were able to navigate during this time and identify was that the majority of individuals that Leader Manley was working with were already clients of Senior Services, specifically in our caregiver program. So that highlighted for us that if they are engaging in our HGuide supported programs and still experiencing some of these challenges, that means that there are gaps in the service. And our caregiver specialists in particular had identified some very particular gaps that we're going to discuss here today. Some of those gaps include specifically that we had a couple families in particular that navigated behavioral health challenges, not only navigating, for those particular grandparents that there were new, innovative, mental health treatments for those living with mental illness on a daily basis, but particularly for child mental health. So for our grandparents in that program, that was brand new information. That was not something they had navigated in the past, and quite frankly, not necessarily something that they had been comfortable talking about in a broad topic and seeking out those services. The other aspect was, of course, everything that happened during COVID and post-COVID and changes to school systems and access to education, getting a Chromebook, making sure to set it up appropriately. Who, does this child have safe, applications on their phone, safe applications on their Chromebook, and how do I navigate some of those particular challenges? Additionally, we have several grandparents that have children that are either in daycare or also after school care, so they're still younger. And we ran into lots of challenges, not only financially, but also access to good quality care. One of our families in particular has a child with special needs, both behavioral and physical, and you can imagine the sphere of options that family has to access good quality care before school, after school, shrinks, as her needs continue to grow. So we were consistently coming up against, financial barriers to, and also educational barriers in terms of making sure that our grandparents understood the systems in which they were operating and how to navigate them with our support. What we highlighted specifically at Senior Services is that our expertise lied solely in older adults. We did not have a coalition of pediatricians that were accessible in the healthcare network, those that could navigate not only, physical aspects of health, but also mental aspects of health. We did not have, a liaison at all of our local school districts across Will County that could say, we can help with the individual education program or an IEP. And these are not things that any of our caregiver specialists make sure that they are educated, aware, and are connected to, because quite frankly, older adults don't have that need. And when we highlighted that there were these gaps in the services, it took many meetings and lots of conversations, not only with Leader Manley's Grand LAC committee, but also amongst our staff and other community members here in Will County to say, we're willing to do something different and build something where we can close some of these gaps in particular. On this next slide, you'll see how we decided to structure this particular program. And at first, if Leader Manley was here, she would say that, in the history of her working in the state of Illinois for the past 11 years, she doesn't frequently come across organizations that are like, will you make more work for us? And the reason that Senior Services is so dedicated to this particular population is because we have navigated some of these same challenges in a different way with our grandparents. And we don't want to have these gaps anymore. And we want to build a program and support the services that Age Guide currently provides, through these direct service agencies, and make these challenges navigatable for our grandparents, and then increase the sphere of influence that we can continue to serve, all across Will County and eventually all across the state. So our first goal as part of this new pilot program here in the state of Illinois is to build a coalition of providers and organizations. As we continue to embark on this journey, we had talked to Leader Manley about what our challenges were. We heard from the Grand LAC Committee, as I already mentioned, and she started talking to those of her colleagues and peers in Springfield and said, is this something that you all navigate as well? And then we found out that they do. And we also found out that it could be more than grandparents raising grandchildren, and it could also be an aunt or an uncle or an older sibling that is also navigating these challenges as well, which is why we have that little plus sign here at the end to say we recognize that there are other relatives raising children, and we're ready and willing to respond to the needs that they have. As we continue to assess what some of those gaps were, not only in Will County, but across the state through Leader Manley's connections, we also wanted to prioritize a needs assessment and then utilizing this coalition of providers and organizations. The other aspect too that we found interesting is that as much as we try, and just as our other colleagues previously talked about, outreach and getting information to everyone to increase that public awareness is necessary to making sure that these programs are accessible and utilized the best that they possibly can. And we find over and over again that we have grandparents that are raising children and relatives raising children that have no idea that there's resources and information available for them, that they don't, you know, there's a grandparent family that reached out to senior services after, you know, some of this publicity and news about the pilot program was going on. And she said, you know, I don't think I'm entitled to any resources because they're my family. And we want to make sure that we increase that public awareness and support for all those relatives raising children, not only in Will County, but throughout the state. The other piece is that we have existing state systems, this was really Leader Manley's priority here, that are vital in supporting our grandparents and relatives raising children. The healthcare system, as we mentioned, the Department of Children and Family Services, there aren't very many staff here at our entire organization that has had experience with DCFS, let alone in our caregiver programming. And we want to make sure that we broaden that and bring that across the state to all service providers that are working with older adults, that we have navigations and supports within these other systems. Our goal is to create a comprehensive and coordinated model so that we can identify and respond to grandparents and relatives raising children in the community and establish those service connections. Again, we know Age Guide has this programming. It's part of the Older Americans Act funding. Senior Services have been a recipient of it for some years, as many of you, all other agencies are as well. What's important is that our other stakeholders and peers in the community also know how we access that information and those resources and what we need to do to continue to support it. Specifically in the next slide, we'll talk about the state funding, the legislation that Leader Manley was able to pass with additional support from Senator Meg Loughran-Capel, here also in Will County, is familiar with senior services. They established the legislation that says that Senior Services of Will County will implement a 3-year pilot program. And we will prioritize all of the goals mentioned on that previous slide with the overall goal of accessing data and information and start building some of these key pathways in which we want other older adults and other senior centers across Illinois, other funded partners, to continue to replicate the program and make sure that everyone in the state of Illinois understands that as a relative raising a child, a grandparent raising a child, there are supportive services available that are specific to you and are designed to assist and support those grandparents as they continue to provide these necessary services, as we've already discussed today. By the end of year 3, we will have a complete program very similar to what Marcia and Araceli talked about, it specifically to meet the needs of those individuals. How can we support them? And hopefully we will have not only built some pathways, but some real solves to some of these gaps and challenges that we have seen our grandparents and our caregivers navigate specifically. Tyler, is there anything else that you want to add specifically about the legislation? Or I'm pretty sure Leader Manley would be confident in what we talked about today. And as Lucinda talked about earlier, that we can handle any questions here in the Q&A session.
Thank you. No, I don't have anything particular. You kind of hit everything I had. I know we have one question in the chat, it looks like. If you happen to know that one. Is there a state agency taking the lead on the program? DHS, DCFS, Department on Aging?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. The Illinois Department on Aging will be our liaison and will oversee the program implementation, our goals and objectives, and everything throughout the 3-year pilot. Very good question.
Okay, thank you, Brianne and Tyler, for the really informational slides. And we're really looking forward, as Age Guide, as our grantee, we're really looking forward to supporting you in the pilots and whatever we can do, and seeing how it turns out, so that we can better serve these kinship families throughout Illinois. So our next presenter is Kelly Rice. Kelly Rice is currently the supervisor of the Older Americans Act Services at the Illinois Department on Aging, and she's going to talk about the aging services available to grandparents and other relatives raising children through the area agencies on aging like Age Guide and the other partners that they have.
Great, thank you, Lucinda. Good morning, everyone. It was really great to see these presentations so far. Really amazing work going. You want to go ahead and do the next slide? All right, to start out, for those that are not familiar with us, we are the Illinois Department on Aging, and our mission is to serve and advocate for older Illinoisans and their caregivers by administering quality and culturally appropriate programs that promote partnerships and encourage independence, dignity, and quality of life. And the way the Illinois Department on Aging operates is, as Lucinda shared, through those area agencies on aging. So the state of Illinois is split up into 13 separate planning and service areas that are led by area agencies on aging, as they are the experts in their individual areas. And they do that through their network of community partners and providers. So our funding and support for the programs and services comes from two different spaces. So the first is our federal funding that we receive through the Older Americans Act. And that is done and based upon a formula regarding the older adult populations that are in those communities. And then the AAAs are determining what's the best use for that money in their area. We also have a couple of different state funding opportunities as well. So for FY24, we are funding 17 organizations to a total amount of $1,299,996 total. Tongue twister there. And that does not include the Will County pilot money as well. And this funding includes those area agencies on aging, but also community-based service organizations and legal support agencies as well. Next slide. So we fund the following service areas for grandparents and other older relatives raising children. First, again, is that respite. So making sure that caregivers have that ability to have that temporary relief from their caregiving responsibilities and time to focus on their needs and their self-care. Second is legal assistance. We know this is a huge area of need for folks to have assistance in navigating. So providing assistance in civil law issues, including any issues with visitation, guardianship, adoption, and formal caregiving relationships. Also support groups. I know those are a huge interest and priority for folks. And so funding that peer-to-peer social network so that people can come together and support each other, also be able to learn from guest speakers to really help them feel supported in approaching their caregiving roles. Also counseling, so individualized behavioral health support services to really help caregivers cope with the impact of that special role. We all know as caregivers in our personal lives, what kind of a toll that can take on you physically, mentally, and emotionally if you're not able to get that self-care in and get that support. And lastly, gap filling, which has been talked about a few times today as well, really providing those supplemental supports to help complement the care that's provided. So is it needing school uniforms or fees and supplies for children, maybe rental assistance, utility assistance, or other emergency needs that come up. On the next slide. So the participant eligibility requirements the threshold is really, really low. And so we do not have any income requirements or restrictions for any of the participants in the program. You also do not need to have legal guardianship of the minor child. However, we are not able to provide services to a relative caregiver if the biological parents are living in that same household. There is age requirements for the relative caregivers. For our federally funded services, since they are through the Older Americans Act, it is required that you are 55 years or older and raising a child under the age of 18. But for the state-specific granted funding, there is no age restriction. Next slide. And this just highlights the numbers that we have for fiscal year 2023. So we served 1,100 grandparents over the age of 55. I think the second number shows the importance of having that supplemental funding that does not have that age limit as well, as we served 373 grandparents under the age of 55 and a total of about 1,900 youth through the program. So it's just a really quick rundown of how we kind of are within the world of funding and overseeing these organizations. Matt Westcott is the program manager for Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. So his information is here. I've also included my information, as well as the Illinois Department on Aging Senior Helpline. This is a really great first stop to get all of your questions answered as far as what might be available in the area, get connections. You can also do that through the Illinois Department on Aging's website as well, where you can search for who is your area agency on aging and how do you contact them as well.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm going to address a couple questions in the chat and the Q&A for you, but if we don't get to those, please know that we are answering them or we will address them at the end because I want to stay on time. But Kelly, Nancy Edwards is asking, are there any programs in Cook County funded through this program? So I assume she's talking about the Department on Aging. Do you want to speak to that one specifically?
Sure. All of our services are for grandparents raising grandchildren and other relatives raising grandchildren. It's throughout the entire state. So again, we do have the federal bucket of money, and that is distributed to all areas based on population. And then we also have specific organizations that have applied and have the supplemental funding as well.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. We're going to move on to, we're going to keep answering the questions in the Q&A, but we're running close to time as we had set up for just an hour and a half. We do have time on our Zoom for longer, so we're going to keep going. If you have to jump out, when we get to that time, please know that, again, this is being recorded and will be available after the fact, but we want to get through all of the slides. There's just so much good information. So please hang in there with us if you can, but you will have access to the information after the webinar. Okay, our next presenter is John, and I want to make sure, I believe he's in attendance, but maybe Christine, can you double check if he was given is a host? He isn't. Can you switch him over? Oh, I got it. Sorry about that. John, are you there?
Sorry, I should be on.
That's okay. You're there. Okay. So our next presenter is John Egan from the Extended Family Support Program through Department of Children and Family Services. He administers this program, which assists Illinois caregivers in caring for grandparents or relatives or relative children. John also leads and created the Illinois Kinship Navigator Task Force. So John, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucinda.
Thanks so much.
So the Extended Family Support Program is just one of the programs that DCFS provides to help relative caregivers. This program serves what we call informal relative caregivers. That means that these relative caregivers are not part of the formal child welfare system. We do have a program that works with that. We call it Home of Relative, where we're assisting unlicensed relative caregivers care for children that are in DCFS care. The Extended Family Support Program works with the other relative caregivers who are not part of the child welfare system. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so I love this picture, partially because this is my mom. But the idea is that so many of our caregivers are just kind of stepping up to the plate. They just know that somebody needs to take responsibility. There's children that are not being cared for because perhaps their child, their sister, their cousin is just not able to meet the needs of the client. And so they kind of step up and say, well, then let me be the one that's going to be doing this. These really are our champions, as that Ohio, or our superheroes that Ohio slide showed. And the purpose of the Extended Family Support Program then is to help them provide a stable home for that child. You can go to the next slide. So to be eligible, we ask that they be a relative, but our definition of relative is very expansive. We include fictive kin. I once helped a caregiver who was not a relative at all. She was the mother of the child's best friend. And when the child's best friend's parent died, she stepped up and said, well, then why doesn't he move in with me and we'll take care of him? The idea is that this person, this relative, knew of the child or had a strong relationship with the child before the child moved in with them. We do want to know that they've been living for more than 14 days, that the caregiver is actually interested in services. Like I said, that they are not part of a DCFS case. Though we do have some cases where we refer a family that had an open DCFS case, they refer to Extended Family Support Program, and then we close the case. And like the Department on Aging program, we do not provide assistance if the parent is in the home, unless that parent is not capable of caring for the child due to something like a developmental disability, a mental illness, something like that. Okay, next slide. So if you know of somebody who is interested, and include Brianne on this, if you have a person that you think might be interested, have them call our hotline. And it is our hotline that people call for abuse. And so what I always say when a person asks, what should I say when I call the hotline, is just say, I'm caring for my relative's child and I need help. And I want to be referred to the Extended Family Support Program. And you state those things so that nobody thinks, well, we need to investigate this. They understand that the Extended Family Support Program is a program DCFS administers to deflect children from coming into care, to deflect children from being part of an investigation. We're doing this to avoid a child welfare case. And so it's important that they say those things if they're calling our hotline. Okay, next slide. Our primary goal really is to get guardianship. There are services that you cannot get if you are not the guardian. And so it is one of the most important things we do. It protects the child. It empowers the caregiver to make decisions on behalf of the child. So it is our most important goal. But it's not our only services or our only goal that we'll provide. Can you go to the next slide, please? I will say before going into other services, though, that a caregiver who does not have guardianship does have very limited rights. They really do not have standing. If a parent comes to the home and says, I want my child back, they really don't have the legal right to say, no, I'm not going to give that child back to you. And sometimes the police will even say to them, unfortunately, you must. And so by getting guardianship, it is then often protecting the safety of the child. Next slide. So those other services, we do a lot of short-term intervention. We do help them get entitlements. The big one is the child-only grant. But thanks to the legislature a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, we also now are able to make direct referrals for childcare. And this is really exciting because it doesn't matter what the caregiver's income is. It doesn't even matter if they're working. If they are an Extended Family Support Program client, they are categorically eligible for child care as long as they have a child that is under the age of 13. It's an extremely important resource for our clients. We have some clients who just are calling us for services for this purpose only. Other thing we assist with is often we have found that the caregiver has trouble enrolling a child in school if they do not yet have guardianship. That should not be an issue. Unfortunately, it often is. And so our trained advocates will then work with the school to make sure that the child is registered. We also have a cash assistance. We pay for beds, dressers, clothes. then we also pay for other things. I mean, we can pay for sometimes a security deposit if the caregiver needs to move, sometimes a utility arrear, some household items. Sometimes we've even paid for summer camp so that the caregiver gets some respite and the child gets an enriched experience. There's one other service that I want to make sure I mention. We are trying to encourage our caregiver families to participate in evidence-based services. And the first one we're working with right now is home visiting. It's provided through a number of ways in the state of Illinois, but we're working with the Department of Human Services so that we're trying to make sure that the developmental needs of children under the age of 2 are being met. And a lot of our children face trauma when they are no longer living with their parents, when they change caregivers. They might not be meeting some of the developmental milestones, and that home visiting program can really help those children meet those needs. Okay, the next slide. I talked about the subsidized daycare. Again, the child is under the age of 13. I forgot that we had an extra slide on this, and I put this in just very recently because it becomes such an important service, and it's such an important entitlement that EFSP caregivers have been given. If you have a program that's being served by another caregiver program, like Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, and you want to obtain this subsidized daycare, please make a referral to the EFSP program so that we can do that. I don't think I mentioned before, though, they also do not have to be a relative. That's very different than most of the programs that DHS runs, where you have to demonstrate that you are a relative. If you're an EFSP client, you do not even have to be a relative, let alone demonstrate that you are a relative. So we're very excited to have this opportunity to provide this service to our clients. Next slide. I mentioned the evidence-based home services. The home visiting is the first one. We also, though, are trying to work with parenting classes. We have a lot of caregivers who have not been a parent in a number of years, or a number of them who have never been a parent. This could be a sister or a cousin who's caring for a child for the very first time. And so we were able to make referrals to our DCFS contracted family advocacy centers for parenting classes and other services as well. Next slide. The program has been really successful at keeping children out of child welfare's care. And it's really why we created the program. When the program was created in 1995, we had almost 52,000 children in care. We now have less than half that number, for a number of reasons. DCFS has done a number of things. We've received a lot of federal recognition for wonderful things we have done. But one of it is, instead of placing a child in care just because the parent's not able to care for them, we use a program like the Extended Family Support Program. In the summer of 2022, we looked through all of the cases that were first served by EFSP in fiscal year 2017. So that would have been anywhere between July 1st, 2016 and June 30th, 2017. And so almost 5 years later, we reviewed all those cases to see if they ever got placed in care. And we found that only 2.17% of the children were actually placed in care. Another 9.78% were part of an intact case. But even those that were part of an intact case were not the caregivers who we were serving. And almost all those cases, in 84% of those cases, the child had gone back to the parent, and it was the parent who was caring for them when that intact case opened up. We believe this shows that this program has been extremely helpful at keeping children from being part of the child welfare system. We think that it reduces tremendously the trauma to the children, as it also saves the Department of Children and Family Services millions of dollars by doing that. Okay, next slide. Here are the people that are administering the program. We have a wonderful EFSP coordinator, Charlene Holmes. Yvette Ramos is our Kinship Navigator ombudsperson. One of her main tasks is working with each of the DCFS contracted agencies the 11 agencies that have 21 offices throughout the state of Illinois, to make sure that these services are being provided and that they're meeting our objectives. The other thing, though, that Yvette Ramos does is that she has a quarterly Kinship Navigator task force meeting. Our next meeting is the second Monday in January. If you have any interest in being part of that Kinship Navigator task force meeting, please email Yvette Ramos at illinois.gov. I am the administrator of the program. You can always contact me if you have any questions about how we are providing services, what we are finding. And so we are always here. Welcome to Susie. We are very excited about this program. Thank you so much.
John, you faded just a little bit. We couldn't hear you.
So sorry. I think I stepped from the microphone.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, though, for allowing us to participate.
Thank you so much. I think we answered all of the questions in the chat for John. So we will keep moving in the interest of time. Our next speaker is Dolores Wigman. Dolores is currently the Elder Rights Coordinator for Prairie State Legal Services and has been licensed to practice law in Illinois for 38 years. Dolores is going to talk to us about some of the legal issues facing grandparents and kinship families and how Prairie State and legal aid services can assist. Oops.
Thank you for inviting us to speak here today. I really appreciate it, and I just want people to know if you have any questions or if you don't remember anything else, I want you to remember that our legal services are free, because even people I've worked with for a number of years don't realize that. And also, when in doubt, if we can represent a person or if we can represent a legal issue, just call us. That's the fastest way to get your answer. And because I cannot possibly explain every kind of issue that we represent or every person we represent in this short presentation. At Prairie State, our mission is to provide legal advice, representation, and advocacy, which assists clients obtain or maintain basic human needs. So that's our main focus, is basic human needs. We are a large law firm. We are a private, non-for-profit law firm. We have 11 offices serving 36 counties. We cover all 8 counties of Age Guide. We operate on a series of grants, and this is another reason I say to call us, because those grants are always changing. At any one time, we have 80 grants. During COVID, we had a lot of money for housing. We could hire more people to help with housing. Different times, we have different grants. And so again, just call us if you're not sure whether or not we can represent. Next slide. Okay, so who we serve. So basically, our older adult services are focused on people over the age of 60, people who can't have the greatest economic or social need, and those are the most vulnerable. So all in all, we usually represent people who cannot afford or have no other way to obtain legal services. And we also assist people under the age of 60 if their income is low enough. However, we also get some money from the Department of Aging, like I think Kelly was talking about, to represent caretakers that are caring for children that are 18 or younger whose parents are unable or unwilling to care for them. So we also get that money from the Department on Aging to assist in any legal matter. It doesn't have to be associated with actually the caretaking of the child. When we talk about basic human needs, basically we're usually talking about income, housing, food, medical care, safety, but I'm going to throw in guardianship with that because that's usually essential for somebody to get that all the other basic needs for somebody that they're a caretaker for. Next slide, please. Our clients must be U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, certain documented immigrants such as asylees, or they can be undocumented if they are a victim of domestic violence or human trafficking. Again, just call us because there's so many gray areas, as anybody knows, with all those different conditions. So just call us. Next slide, please. A client must request our services. So a service provider can't call me and say, you know, so-and-so just started taking care of a certain child. She needs guardianship. Would you call her? I have to know that they requested our services. This is one of the ethical requirements of attorneys. So that person needs to call me, or somebody needs to send me something in writing that says that they want me to call me. They also must have capacity. And I threw this in here because mostly I help with seniors myself, and people don't understand. A person has to understand what the attorney is doing for them in order to establish a relationship. And a lot of my clients are elderly, and somebody might call me and say, oh, my mom was diagnosed with dementia, so I'm going to call you and work with you on this issue. But I talked to the mom and she's perfectly fine. So if she has the capacity to understand what she wants me to do in any area, then I can work with her. And you need different capacity to do different things in the legal world. Obviously, level of understanding is different to make financial or contractual decisions. Next slide, please. We do work with agents and guardians. And like I said, since I mostly work with seniors, I just always want people to know if they are somebody's power of attorney, or if they're somebody's guardian, and they want their client or their person to be my client, I treat them as my client as far as possible. Just because my work with the area agencies on aging usually runs into people who do have guardians or people who do have powers of attorney. I always want people to know this. I have certain ethical obligations to the person that's my client. Obviously, if I'm representing a caretaker, the caretaker is my client, not the child. So we do what the caretaker wants. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go over the areas that we assist with. And a lot of these areas don't have to do with the caretaker taking care of the child, because as I said, the issue does not need to be related to the actual caregiver giving. And obviously, if we can address needs or especially legal needs for a person, then they might have the money and the time to deal with the other needs that they need to deal with whoever they're the caregiver for. So everybody that's eligible for our services under any of our grants, we can help them with certain things. We can help them with housing. Housing we consider a basic human need. So evictions, it could be the person being evicted, or it could be that older person that's trying to get her adult child who's causing trouble in the household out. We can also help with that. We can help with foreclosures. Property tax sale issues. A lot of people don't understand. They get these strange letters in the mail from, the treasurer. They don't understand what's going on. We provide advice. We assist people with that. Loss or denial of subsidized housing. This happens more often than you think. A person starts caring for somebody. They don't realize they got to tell the housing authority, hey, I got my grandson here. I got somebody else here. We can help run interference, help them with that. Make sure that they get in the right size housing for how many people are in the family. We assist with nursing home, assisted living, supportive living discharges. Again, I deal with a lot of seniors. People don't understand if the nursing home administrator comes and says, you need to take your person out because we can't care for them any longer. They have a right to a hearing. They have certain due process rights. We assist with that. We assist with a lot of debt issues. A lot of people have different debt issues. Some people don't understand what their rights are, what the requirements are. We can write letters to creditors, to collection agencies. If this senior is living on Social Security and she's got a huge credit card debt and she's paying that rather than paying her grandchild's school fees or whatever, we can work with her on it. We can explain, because a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of people out there that are what's called collection proof. If you have a large credit card bill, but you only have Social Security and you don't have a home or anything else anybody can take, they can't do anything to you. You don't need to pay that credit card bill. I know that sounds kind of cold, but you need to pay for your food. You need to pay, whatever is important in your life, because they cannot, creditor cannot take your Social Security from you. We assist people with domestic violence. Usually this is representing people in order of protection cases. That's mostly what that's about. We assist with powers of attorney, explaining powers of attorney, explaining to people that if you named your son as your power of attorney for property, you still have rights. You have a right to have him give you an accounting of what he's spending the money on. You have a right to terminate that. If you think he's doing something improperly, you still have some control. We do defense of guardianships for older adults, just because we don't want people's rights taken away if they don't need to be. We do a limited filing for guardianships because we don't, and what I put that in there is because we will file for guardianships with children, with minors all the time. In fact, about 60% of the funding I was looking at what we use the caretaker funding on. Seems like 60% of it is filing guardianship for minor children. But we are very careful about which seniors we assist somebody filing guardianship for. Things that I didn't mention in here, and somebody else was talking earlier, we do help with education issues. We can help if the child isn't being given an IEP, or the IEP is not proper. We can help with that. Just this year, our office talked to several different school districts who were not allowing a caretaker to enroll their person in school because they didn't have guardianship, just like the DCFS person was saying. Some of the schools don't realize it, and you have to point to the law and explain to them, this is, you can't keep them out of school. Next slide, please. Termination or denial of public benefits. So we don't usually help with applications, but we do a lot of denials. We do denials of Social Security disability for children. That's one of our a usual case for us. So if somebody's denied, or maybe the amount is reduced or terminated, we can help somebody with those appeals. Recently, there have been a lot, and I don't know if Social Security's cleaned out their files or whatever. There's been a lot of Social Security overpayments. Somebody will get a letter in the mail that will say, hey, in 2017, we paid you $20,000 too much. Please put a check for $20,000 in an envelope and send it to us within 30 days, or we're going to take all of your Social Security until that's paid for. People panic, obviously. So what we can do is we can appeal it. We can request that they reconsider it. If it really is true, because sometimes it is true, people don't understand the Social Security rules are very complicated. It takes attorneys here months to figure out, when they first start these Social Security rules. So of course, somebody, at home might not understand what it is they have to tell them, or that they're supposed to tell them if they think they're getting too much money. People think, woohoo, I got $50 more than I thought. Well, 5 years from now, they might try to get back from you, and they'll say, you knew you weren't supposed to get that money. Give it back to us. So anyway, so we can ask a request for reconsideration. If it was proper, we can ask for a waiver. They'll waive it if it wasn't the person's fault and the person can't afford it. And lastly, if neither of those two work, because Social Security hates waiving it, but we can ask that the amount paid monthly can be reduced, and we've gotten it reduced up to down to $10 a month. They might be $200 when they finish paying it off, but they will reduce it in certain times. So SNAP, we assist people with SNAP. Just assisted a grandma because she all of a sudden had her grandson and included him in her monthly food stamp allotment. We assist with Medicaid, denials, terminations. Every once in a while, we'll assist with applications, not usually, but it is complicated. If anybody ever did that online, it's like 26 pages or something. Medicare. Medicare is something that nobody thinks about appealing, but but it can be appealed. The denials can be appealed. Last year, the Inspector General for the Health and Human Services pulled 1 month of Medicare Advantage plans and reviewed the denials and found out almost 20% of the denials were improper. And our seniors don't realize that you can appeal those decisions. So we will help with that. We help, see. Oh, next slide, please. We provide legal advice, representation, advocacy, education. We do some outreach when we can. Obviously, our resources are limited just like everyone else, so all of it depends on our bandwidth at the time. We can only handle civil cases. We can't help anybody with traffic or criminal. We can't help with fee-generating cases. That means we can't sue people for money. If somebody gets in a car accident, we can't help them sue somebody else for money. We can't help with cases that have a conflict of interest. And this happens more often than you think. We help one family member with a case. We find all about their situation and their background. And then, 2 months later, somebody wants to file an order of protection against them. It's too soon. We can't help them because it's a conflict of interest. Next slide, please. So how to contact us. We have 800 numbers that you can contact. You can contact a local office. We have 5 offices that cover the age guide area. We provide legal services in any language. We have a great company that we contract for, and I have sometimes only had to wait 5 minutes online to get an Indian dialect or some kind of a Chinese language. So we're able to help just about anybody. I think that's it. Also too is if somebody needs us, most of our service partners have a referral form. So if maybe the person has a difficult time getting through to us, they can either email or fax that form in. And like I said, at any time they can call and leave a message.
Thank you so much, Dolores. I just wanted to clarify, because you are our grantee for legal aid services in the Older Americans Act, and the the grantee for other counties in Northern Illinois, according looking at your map. But the other legal aid providers in the state of Illinois who are contracted through the Older Americans Act do the same things that you all do. So if for those folks who are not living in our region or Prairie States region, you can reach out to your legal aid provider. And if you're not sure who that is, you can find that out on the Department on Aging's website. We're all happy to connect you to that legal aid provider. At Age Guide, Dolores, I'm speaking on your behalf, but I think you're, open to sending people, making sure people get connected to the provider in their region.
Yes, you can always give us a call. Sometimes it's hard to get through, but just please keep trying or email us. If you're outside of Cook County, pretty much it's either Prairie State Legal Services or Land of Lincoln. But in Cook County, there are a lot more legal aid providers. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for hanging in there with us. We are in the home stretch. We understand if you have to leave due to time, but I hope that you'll stay or at least listen to our final presentation when the recording is released. So to close us out, we are going to hear from Nancy Phillips. Nancy is the program coordinator for the Illinois Family Resource Center. Nancy has worked with in the substance abuse field for over 35 years and brings personal experience to kinship care through both child welfare and volunteer guardianship. So Nancy, we'll have you close us out.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
So
I know it's 12, it's lunchtime, you've been sitting. So I'm going to do an overview as the Illinois Family Resource Center can add to what we're talking about today. If you will notice, there is my email address. Please write it down. The IllinoisFamilyResources.org website. These are great resources for you, and I'm going to explain a little bit of why. The Illinois Family Resource Center, we're going into our 9th year. It is funded through the Department of Human Services Division of Substance Use Prevention and Recovery, better known as SUPER, which I kind of have to giggle at sometimes. But recognizing that the importance of families getting well. Substance use disorder and co-occurring issues are family diseases. They're family issues, and they impact families and communities. And Illinois is taking a look at that. They've recognized that. And 9 years ago, we started the Illinois Family Resource Center. And I was a good person to put in there because I am 4 generations of different substance misuse and mental health issues in my environment, in my lifetime. And the way I fit into this topic today is my husband and I have had 2 generations of kinship care. And I never thought 25 years ago that that would be a part of my life. I was raised by a father who was a social worker. He worked for DCFS high up in the state. I was programmed to think very much social work and, you know, impacting kids and everything. And I still am, or I wouldn't still be working. But that's kind of what I bring to it. Oftentimes when I do trainings or information on kinship care and its relationship to substance use disorder and the co-occurring issues, I add more initials to my qualifications, and that's PLE, person with lived experience. I am that daughter of, wife of, mother of, grandmother of, different issues that fall in there. And as a result of that, I have been that guardianship through 2 ways. The first time it was through DCFS. We had adopted a child in 1971 that came with some issues in her background and in her family, and it played out into her adulthood, and we ended up with her 2 children. Those are now adults. And we ended up with the child of one of them until just about a year ago. So this is my passion, to get out and share with people what's going on, to share with people that are in kinship and seniors, recognizing that substance use disorder and mental health issues is one of the primary reasons that many children are placed. I was looking at Generations United, Kentucky, or the Ohio group shared a number of things from them. I love Generations United because it's such a good way to get education and background and resources. They do work internationally, but what they do for us in the United States is great. And they do a yearly report that's outstanding. And the one that came out last week, they highlighted that from 2002 until 2019, the number of children placed with kinship care and grand families went up from 21% to 40%. And I would challenge that that's much higher. I was in a meeting between DCFS and the super providers last week, and I just asked the question, knowing this was coming up. Just shoot out a number that you think would be pretty close to what you're seeing as they come into kinship care through your system. How many are substance use and substance misuse related? And the number was well up there, 80%. And I believe that having coordinated outpatient services with a grant, back when we did grants, that was a contract between DCFS and what was then DASA, the Department of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse. The number of children placed was incredibly high due to misuse of substances. So that's my passion for being here. If you want to go ahead and change the slide, I want to tell you what our goal is so that we can offer some services as you're working with families. I've accessed services through Lifespan, that's our Department of Aging in our area, and got a lot of good support. We had placement through DCFS, and then we did a voluntary guardianship this last time, and that child now at 6 years is with her father and his wife. It was a great move, but there's a lot of connections that can be shared. Our goal with the Resource Center is to provide support around substance use disorder, mental health issues, and gambling disorder. And we provide those information. We don't do direct service, although I'm qualified to do that. I don't do that anymore. We provide information. This is a statewide program. Our house in Charleston holds the contract. And we work as the Illinois Family Resource Center. Human service providers, teachers, schools, significant others, communities, anyone that wants the information, the training, the support, so that you can help families move through the chaos of substance use disorder and co-occurring issues. That's what we're there for. We do, you can go ahead with the next slide. Thank you. We do website postings on a regular basis. Facebook page. Sign up for our Facebook page. You'll get lots of good links. We do at least monthly webinars on anything that has to do with substance misuse, the impact on families, moving ahead. We bring in presenters that do them. One of the exciting things that we're doing right now is this. We are putting together webinars that Jerry Moe will be providing for us, and he is a nationally known presenter. He's a senior advisor for the National Association for Children of Addiction, of which we provide trainings to people within Illinois with them and the curriculum, evidence-based trainings that impact families and children that come from substance use disorder. We can provide technical assistance. We can do individualized in-service presentations, anything. We can do them in Zoom. We can do them in person. Do a number of conference and exhibits. I do a lot of conference workshops. Last month I did 2, and one of them was a request for kinship care by the Illinois Certification Board, 3-hour presentation. So if anyone needs that, I've got it. We provide information on research that's out there. And the thing that's really exciting, we were able to expand this year, and we have a person working in the Chicago area, and she has taken a lot of the PowerPoint presentations and things, and those are posted. Our webinars are on the YouTube channel that we have there on our website, and you can see all this variety of information that we've got, both by presentations that I've done and the presenters that we've had that have done. And we are starting to be able to do things in Spanish. Okay, one more slide. Thank you. NACOA, which is the National Association for Children of Addiction, has put out a lot of wonderful data, but their latest update that just came out, 1 in 3 children live in families with a parent or a caregiver with alcohol or opioid use disorder. In this part of Illinois, I would also definitely add meth in there because it's probably the primary for where I am. These children are often the first hurt and last helped. Children are desperate for support and understanding that can bring them hope, and that is so true. And I think that we have to look at what are those resources out there to learn more about it, and how do we help the seniors and the people providing kinship care. I'm very fortunate. I'm in my 70s. I'm still working full time. I love what I do. And I always say they're going to have to wheel me out. But there are stories to share. And that helps take away the stigma. That helps people get directed where they need to go. And those of you working in kinship care and with seniors, you can provide those resources, and we are one of them. And I really encourage you to take advantage of that and take advantage of our webinars, because we're bringing in people that are nationally known to do some of those and provide those resources. The one thing that if I have to share that I think is really important is I want to share with you, we know that when you get that call, and I got that call from DCFS, we are picking up your grandchildren. We need you to come home. I was working at the state level then. I was at a desk in Springfield, even though I live in Charleston. And I got that call, and it was quite a journey. And what I have learned since then is as you work with people, especially under those circumstances, you need to look at relocation stress syndrome. And that's something that's really important to be aware of. It's physical and or psychological. It's a disturbance created by transfer from one place to another. So when you're moving that child into their grandparents' home, know that both may be experiencing some of that. It's such a change in the grandparents' life. I've done this twice. And it's also definitely traumatic for our children. And we have to be aware of that. And often that move is just the beginning. And it may mean not only are they moving in with their grandparents, but because they're moving in with grandparents, they may have to leave where they are if it's a senior environment and they can't have their grandchildren with them. It's just the beginning of adjusting, and grief is also a lot of that process. So I encourage you to find out more about that. How do you work with your families in that? I love the fact that we are seeing navigators for this, because the field of substance use disorder, through the ROS councils that are starting to be created in Illinois, the recovery-oriented systems of care. If you don't know about it, look it up. I don't have time to go through it now, but it's creating environments for people early in recovery and their families and the communities to support ongoing recovery. And we know that is generated around lots of peer navigators, recovery navigators, and to see this in kinship care navigators is exciting to me, because I really believe that that system works. One of my certifications is basically doing that, although I don't practice it in direct care right now. So as you're working with the people, I encourage you to help them learn more about what's going on. I'm going to quit right now because I know that we're really hurting for time. I want you to please get a hold of the Illinois Family Resource Center. Look on the website. We are here to help you through that. I have got a number of presentations on kinship care, and she's flipping on through a lot of the overheads that we haven't had time to do. Thank you. Join me. We've got to take care of our kids, and we've got to take care of the people that take care of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And I want to point out, for those of you who are in the Chicagoland area, Nancy's colleague has put her, Christina has put her information also in the chat if you are in the northern part of the state. I want to thank you all for—
I didn't realize she was on.
Yeah, she's here. I want to thank you all for hanging in there with us on such an important topic and hearing from all of the different sectors. We hope that this will prompt more collaboration and has been informative for you as you learn about the different resources available for the kinship families across the state. I don't see any other questions, and because we're short on time, we'll go ahead and close out. If you have any questions, you'll get, again, the PowerPoint, you have all the speakers' information, and here at HGuide, again, we're we're the area agency for the 8 collar counties around Cook, but we're always happy to connect you and find a resource for you if it's not in our region. So please reach out if you are looking for resources to any of us, and we're happy to connect you. Also from HGuide, we have an aging report, the newsletter, we have Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, we have a podcast and a regular blog. So you can sign up for those things to get connected to us in our region, or, for information, regardless of what region you live in, at our website. So please don't forget to take the survey as you close out. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and holiday season for whatever holidays you celebrate. And we thank you for your time today. Have a good day, everybody.